Welcome to the Teach Better Talk podcast, your official podcast for the Teach Better Podcast Network, the hub for all things education, brought to you by teachbetter.com. The Teach Better Talk podcast is committed to answering your burning questions through a variety of lenses and bringing new offers to you and your colleagues to help you thrive throughout the school year. My name is Ray Hewart, and we love your questions here on the pod. If you have any questions that you'd love us to consider as topics for future episodes, please share them with us by emailing info@teachbetter.com.
How do you build an authentic community with only your voice? This is going to be a really interesting topic. But before we get too far in, I want to give a quick shout out to the one and only Megan Polke here on the team. Megan is the newest trainer. So for those of you who have gotten the opportunity to have Megan in your school, you're very, very special. She is an expert in special education and is doing wonderful professional development with paraprofessionals and special educators, especially those educators that are focusing on co-teaching relationships. So make sure that you reach out to her as a member of our team to get that support. We are talking a lot about co-teaching relationships this week as we focus on building relationships. And I cannot think of a better duo that works to build relationships than the two people that we have on the podcast. This is by far accomplishing something on my bucket list. We have Chris and Nikki from the Morning Mix here in Chicago here with us. Chris, Nikki, how you feeling today?
Hi, this is so exciting.
Ray, this is awesome. We're excited.
Yeah.
We're more excited than you are.
I'm so glad the people you wanted canceled and you got us. This is great. I love this.
You know, you say that, but I have been counting down the days till I got you guys booked on the show. My mother, I texted her the morning Chris responded to my Instagram message like 3 months ago. And I was like, Mom, I think I'm going to get him on Teach Better Talk. And she was like, that's your dream.
Oh, no. That is so sweet. Well, no, we're so flattered. This is so exciting. And I'm sorry, we did DM a while back and forth trying to find a date for all this stuff. So it's great that this all came together. And this is airing in my birth month. So it all makes sense. It all comes together.
There we go. Meant to be, meant to be. Friends, if you are not familiar with the Morning Mix, you absolutely will be now. They do have a podcast that we will be mentioning to you. You'll definitely have to go over, subscribe, rate, and review. They also, I cannot emphasize this enough, have an app, which you should absolutely be putting on in the morning. It's so easy as you're getting ready in the morning to throw on. You can listen live. That's the way that I recommend. But if you're not familiar, we'll convince you as we go. Chris, Nikki, I'd love to get into learning about who you are as people. We'll talk about the show here in a little bit. Chris, will you start us off? Who are you? What do you do? What's your jam?
Yeah, absolutely. No, first and foremost, though, you nailed that was great. Our boss is very happy. He will send you the $10 for the app mentioned. No,
free movie tickets.
Exactly.
That you can win on the app.
That's right. Yes. That's
no,
right.
Hold on. You do a double your paycheck. How about we do that one?
We do. Yes. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if we can find any cash to send your way. Hello. I'm Chris. I am the host of the Morning Mix. We are on live every morning from 5:30 to 10. So our day-to-day lives are sort of built around the fact that we get up super early all the time. My wife and I live in Logan Square. We have 2 kids. They're 5 and 3. So our 5-year-old just started kindergarten this year in CPS, which we're so excited about. She did pre-K with CPS last year, but now we're at what feels like our forever school, which is exciting. So ideally she'll be there K through 8, which is super exciting for us because we really value community. So we're really excited, and we've made friends with parents already, and we've gone to the kickoff bash and all the sort of stuff, fall festival and all that stuff. So we're super psyched and super happy there. But I've been at the Mix really a longer time than it looks like. I was here from 08 to 16 off the air in marketing. And then my wife and I moved away, and then we came back in 2019, and then I was on the air. And that's when Nikki and I started working together, doing a late night new music show that not even we listened to, but it was really fun. And we figured that we had really good chemistry. And then one thing happened after another. And before you knew it, we're co-hosting the morning show together. So here we are.
Well, it was that and Mexico. We would anytime there were any kind of trips, it would be the two of us were the last people up and always having fun. And our bosses were kind of like they're not getting paid to act like idiots.
No.
You know, they just do it naturally. So
and I would somehow convince whatever music guest was on the trip to go get their guitar in their room so that we could get a noise complaint. It's great.
I think that's great. Every educator listening is going to understand that if there's a free trip opportunity to like a conference or anything, sign me up. I'll take a free vacation. No problem.
With vodka.
With
Yeah.
vodka,
With vodka.
absolutely.
Just add vodka. That's
So
it.
yeah, same. You know, we have very similar stories. I've been at the mix for over 20 years, which is kind of nutty. I've been in every role, just short of like cleaning the bathroom. I've done it all. I love radio. I actually had a high school radio station. That's how this all started, which is really great. I remember coming home and telling my mom and dad, "This is what I want to go to college for. This is what I'm going to do." And they were like, "Cool, you're still getting a degree in something. This is don't bank on this." And I went to Michigan State, which has a great ComEd program, wonderful teaching program. My mom went to Michigan State, got her master's at Michigan State. She was an educator for well over 30 years, teaching from third grade to becoming a principal. So it's been, education has been front and center in my house my entire life. Like I remember every end of the year and Christmas, my mom would put out like all of the candles and like all of the things from all the students. And as a kid, I would get so excited. Like, what did they get her this year?
Used body wash.
Yes, I love it. I don't care. So yeah, and I have one son who is 14, and I'm learning as I go because he's 14 and he has his own space, and I can't just talk about everything he's doing. So it's a tricky balance of being as forthcoming as I can be, but also respecting his privacy at the same time as a parent.
Right.
So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, the educators listening right now, I'm sure you can empathize with not only living the professional world of, whatever responsibility you have, but then also having a parent role of having to serve in that space and all the unknowns or knowns that come with that. I can only imagine that's its own challenges.
Yeah, it's like we said right before we got on with you. I got a call from his high school. This is it's your parent first, job second.
I remember the first time, and this was when he was in 7th grade, I want to say, but another kid had heard us on the show mention him. So then it was like Nikki's finding out after school that like, oh, his friend said he heard us talking about him, and that opens like a whole new door now to a kid in his formative years being like, what's my mom saying about me? What's going on? Why are you doing that? You know?
But isn't that the same when your mom or your dad is a teacher in the building that you go to, right? Isn't that like the worst?
Oh no, I got away with nothing in the same day. My mom knew all the teacher. It was the worst. I would get, and my mom purposely never put us in the same school. That was a big rule of hers. And I remember she'd be like, well, Mrs. Kraft said that you did not. And I was like, Mrs. Kraft,
come on, you're outing me before I even got home.
Mom, I got to deal with this.
It's just not fair.
Very similar.
Yeah, it's not fair when the teacher has your parent's cell phone number. It's just not fair. They can text back and forth.
Right. And we're in a whole new world as parents. Like, I mean, our daughter's only 5. I can't imagine in 10 years what she's going to have. And you know what I'm saying? In terms of tech and so forth. But to be able to get a text from your son on his lunch break or something when you can access his phone is crazy to me because we didn't have that, You wanted to call home, you had to go to the office, be like, I got to call my mom,
Right. And if you were in trouble, you went home and then you pretend to sleep when they got home so that they hopefully wouldn't have to wake you up to punish you.
Absolutely. There was sneaky ways to get away with things. That's absolutely true. So as you were thinking about going into whatever field you wanted to go into, Nikki said you already knew that you wanted to go into radio. Did you have like a backup option? Was radio the go-to? I don't know anyone growing up that knew that this was even, to be honest, I listened to you growing up. My entire upbringing was 101.9 was on the radio. I didn't even know there were other radio stations, honest to God.
Oh, we love you.
I thought this was the only radio station growing up. And I didn't even know that this was a job. I'm like, you can work in radio? Like, I don't feel like people in education we always don't do a good job exposing students to all the different roles that you could have outside of the classic ones. So how did you get exposed to this being the direction you wanted to go?
Like I said, it was this high school radio station, and my teacher was Mrs. Shoemaker, whom I just connected with this past winter.
Yeah, that's right. They had dinner together.
We had lunch. She lives in Florida. I found her on Facebook. I said, can we please meet? She said, absolutely. And we had such a wonderful time. And I mean, she truly changed my life, especially being a woman in radio, because there just weren't many of us. And so she was like, if this is something you want to do, here are some schools you should look at that have good programs. And I had friends who went to Michigan State and I knew about their program, and it was the same kind of thing. I went there really one-track mind of radio. I mean, I was getting the degree, so I knew I could do something. And how many of us, we get degrees and stuff that have nothing to do with what we ended up doing?
Well, and her backup plan was newspapers.
Yeah,
so
right.
It was like, well, if it ain't radio, I mean, what else isn't going to die? You know what I mean?
We're so secure. But yeah, so we had a college station and I jumped, headfirst in that. And that was it. And then I was doing what you're talking about. I did a morning show while still at college. So I did a morning show on a commercial station while still being a college student, which is a real bummer. But I was committed to it's what I wanted to do. And luckily I had great educators. Gary Reed was the other one at State who really helped me and encouraged me the entire way.
Jeez. Chris, did you know when you went to Illinois State that this was the direction you were going, or did you go in undecided?
No, I did worse. I went in for an acting degree, which is so much upside.
Sure.
With my backup plan at the time was education. So I went in double majoring in acting and theater education.
Sure.
And we had a couple in the first year, we had a couple instances just in the college classroom where we would teach a lesson just with our college, classmates. And I realized I was like, oh, I just am using this as a stage. Like I can't go into a classroom. I would just use this to do stand-up the whole time. I can't do this. So then I started to focus on acting and writing, which kind of led me out afterwards. So I ended up at the Mix because a friend worked here in marketing and promotions. And it was the summer after my senior year of college. I was at a graduation party, and our friend Jim, our mutual friend Jim O'Brill, and my friend from high school, Jim O'Brill, the same guy. So he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're looking for a job, and we need people to be promotions assistants. Would you want to work at the radio station? You would go to events and you would promote the radio station," which at the time was like give out chapstick and Nickelback tickets. That was the gig. So that's what I did. I got the job, and our promotions director now, Diane, is the one who hired me here in 2008. So I started as a promotions assistant, and then that's when Facebook and Instagram started blowing up. And I convinced our marketing director, Big Karwowski, that we needed a Facebook page for the radio station. And so then I was the first social media manager for the Mix. And I was doing the morning show at the time and our sister stations, doing all the social. And then a buddy and I did a web series for fun because we were doing improv. And the web series we filmed at the radio station overnight when nobody was here because our boss at the time let us come in here. And it was called The Jams. And then we got a development deal for that web series, which turned into a 4-episode show on Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon, which was so cool. And that's when my wife and I were like, let's go to LA. Okay, great. So we did that. And I worked for Ryan Seacrest for a little while out there. And then I worked at an ad agency. And then our current boss here at the Mix called and said, I'm looking for new talent. I've heard about you from Big Karwowski. Can we get to know each other? And that was in like February. And by July, they offered me the night show here. So I had done radio in college for a year and really liked it, but I always just wanted to entertain. So I was just always looking for outlets for entertaining. And then when they described what they would want me to do here, I was like, well, that sounds like I could do all the stuff I love to do in one spot. And we'd be back home. And we had our daughter at that time. She was 3 months old. So we were like, oh, this will be great. And it's been great. And now we've been back longer than we were gone, which feels crazy. And somehow it went from nights to afternoons to mornings. And now we're doing the morning show, which feels kind of impossible that it's a thing we're doing, but I absolutely love it. And I get to do all of the stuff I've always wanted to do, but every morning and with Nikki. So it's awesome.
Just without the free Tito's. That's the only difference.
No free vodka.
Yeah,
they don't give that to you at 4 a.m. That's so weird.
Right.
Oddly enough, no.
Maybe, well, you guys end at 10. So maybe it's like, right after the show.
What do you mean
Mary's.
maybe? What do
yeah,
you mean
Bloody,
maybe?
It's Bloody Mary time. Yeah.
Does anyone feel like Chris just used that as a platform to name drop everything he possibly could? Like
She says this all the time. It's just facts. I don't know.
So when I was working with Seacrest,
I knew the Ryan Seacrest comment, and I was waiting for it to come up because I was like, no one goes on a podcast and has worked for Ryan Seacrest and doesn't at least drop that once. Right?
I name dropped the teachers that had impacts in my life, and you name dropped
those
Ryan
teachers
Seacrest.
know.
Okay.
Jeremy Morton knows at Prospect High School. He doesn't need to hear me say his name again. Yeah.
I get it. I think it's phenomenal. And I know that educators love hearing the stories of how certain people get into certain industries because it's always amazing, to me at least, I mean, I don't even know how I got into my job currently, and having to support students to essentially get into a role that probably doesn't even exist yet is the role teachers have every single day. So it's always interesting to hear people's backstories.
I'm reminded of a story. I was jogging with Kevin
Oh
Hart,
my gosh,
and we were running to meet Mark Wahlberg, and we were going to hang out. No,
None
and
of
then
this
Jennifer
happened.
Aniston happened to drive
Yeah.
by, and
Uh-huh.
you know.
The dream.
And then you woke up. And then you
Yes.
woke
Oh
up.
God! And I was late for work.
Well, one thing you guys do extremely well is build relationships with your community. Your radio station obviously hits everywhere in the Chicagoland area. And now with the app, anyone around the world can listen to you guys in the morning. I know I listen. I actually really do love the podcast though, because it takes all your funny moments and breaks it down into like a half an hour to an hour segment, which literally just leaves me laughing the entire time.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
I know that this is something that you guys had to have prepped and practiced day to day, and something that educators here can learn through. So we'll be right back as we get into our key topic.
Quick pause to talk about social media. Are you on social media and following the Teach Better team? Head over to your favorite platform, whether it be YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or anything in between, and make sure you're following at Teach Better Team. You'll be getting full updates on all exciting news, including deals of the week, fun blogs, new podcast episodes, and easy, quick downloads that are awesome to send to your teachers at the start to every new week.
How do we build authentic connections with only using our voice? We are here with Chris and Nikki from the Morning Mix, and we are talking about the wonderful use of your voice to build connections. Guys, you have great personalities. You obviously are beautiful to look at for our friends that are listening and watching over on YouTube.
Ray is a great
You are the
actress.
best.
She is
We
delightful.
need this every day.
You're just so good looking, guys. I love seeing your faces, but I grew up just listening to you, and I listen to you. Typically, I assume most of your audience listens to you. And yet most people probably would say they've built really good relationships with you. That is a skill. That is truly a skill.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I've been at Target. This actually happened. I was at Target with my daughter, and I was looking for pants. And my daughter at the time is like 4. So I'm holding up pants. I'm like, do you like these ones? What about these ones? And a woman from across the way goes, I thought that was you. And I looked up, and she was like, I could tell when you were talking. I was like, oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you. How are you? Do you like these pants? So, you know.
Yeah, that same thing happened at a Cubs game. So I laugh.
Yeah.
I know I laugh a lot on the show because I just love laughing. My whole family, my brothers are like, we're all like this. Wherever we go, we just laugh. And you made me laugh a lot. And I was at a Cubs game. I started laughing, and they're like, "You're Nikki."
Ew.
And I was like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
this is so bad."
But that was
Well-
sort of a part of it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ray. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, it must be true because I don't know, I guess, how frequently people who listen to you actually then make the intentional moment that when they get out of their car or go into their workday to like Google what your faces look like, unless they're going on social media to intentionally be like, what does Nikki's hairstyle look like? Like, I mean, they're just listening to you. It's all audio.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, we have social media on our side, which is super helpful. So, of course, like with our Facebook and Instagram and updates like that, people see us. But it is interesting when we are out. Like we were just at Downers Grove North High School about a month ago for a football game and hanging out with a bunch of listeners and the students and stuff like that, which was fun. And it always happens at events like that where people will go, oh my God, I can put a face to the name and now I know what you look like. And I always apologize, but they're always grateful to be able to do that. But when we launched the show, we decided, I think part of it was like we had come out of the pandemic and it felt like everybody's BS meter was at the highest it had ever been. Like we weren't interested in being placated anymore. Nobody wanted goofy characters. And that's why we just decided like, you're Nikki, I'm Chris. This is actually our names. It's actually who we are. We'll just be ourselves. And so that's been sort of the crux of the show, certainly along with Whip and Violetta as well, as like, we're just going to be who we are. We'll tell you what's happening in our lives. And then the relatability of that, I think, is what's blown up. Like Nikki talks about going to Aldi every Wednesday for the Isle of Shame. And then we'll be at events and people are bringing her stuff from Aldi.
Because they know what's up. It's
Exactly
it's
right,
great.
yeah.
But that's totally right. I mean, it's who we are. And at the end of the day, like we all share this stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Like we all have these weird quirks. We're not in this alone. And at the end of the day, we're not special. Like any one of us has these they have crazy situations that happen to us. Teachers, I mean, going back to, again, my mom, she would come home and tell us the stories at dinner table about the student. Every teacher has that student or that mom or that, so all of our lives are their own comedies in their own way. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of exposing yours.
Yeah. And it's funny because we'll bring up a topic on the air that maybe happened to one of us over the weekend or, just something that we think, well, maybe that's just between us. And then the phones will start to light up with people who are like, oh, that happened to me 2 years ago and blah, blah, blah. And you just realize we're all so much more connected. We're all so much more the same than we are different. And so it's really nice to be able to just take that everyday slice of life and make the connection with the audience that way. And then that way it feels like you're not listening as much as you're participating because we're bringing you into what's really happening, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's important for us all to reflect on, no matter what situation we're in, whether we're in the classroom or in our normal day-to-day lives with our friends or serving in a principal or leadership role, to always have that element of authenticity, of being our true selves, our true personality in our roles. It just makes the job easier. Then you're not faking it. You can truly focus on other skill sets it takes to do the job, not the persona that you're trying to focus on keeping, the right attitude for. So I think that's
it's a lot harder to remember lies. Do you know what I mean?
It really is. Yeah. And then to keep them straight over the years or whatever.
Yeah. It is just so much easier to just say, hey, I don't know this. I'm bad at this. I'm great at this. I like this. I don't, rather than to try to remember what I said that I did or didn't like, which isn't true. It's just, I don't think I could just do it. I'm just not smart enough.
Too much to keep track of. And we also we talk so much that it's like, how could you keep track of all of those things? It's impossible.
The other thing you guys do really well, and I know that I personally have benefited from this, is the prep for the show. I cannot imagine how it's done because there are so many fun tidbits that I'm going to encourage educators to really focus in on this element of the podcast. There are so many takeaways that I have stolen from the show and brought into my classroom as attention getters, fun facts, interesting elements of surveys that you guys find somewhere and then are perfect for the middle school classroom I was teaching or the professional development that I'm going to for that day. And I don't know how you guys find this stuff. How do you prep for a show that you do Monday through Friday and you talk for 5 hours, but I guess there's music breaks, but yikes.
Yeah. The show's on for 4.5 hours live every morning, which is exciting, 5 days a week. And we love it. We have a producer who's amazing, our executive producer, John Swanson. And he's been in the business a really long time. So he's really great at identifying what things are going to resonate with the audience and where are the people going to want to interact and have conversation around. But a peek behind the curtain, we have also what are called prep services, where we get sort of an outline of what's happening in the world or what are people talking about, and even here are some goofy facts or stories that might be of interest to your audience. And we have several of those services. So then it's about sort of going through all that and identifying, well, what makes sense and what should we talk about and what shouldn't we? And then we all have our other moments, like Nikki has Nikki's sound check. So she'll dive in on music news and know that, okay, this is coming up and that artist has an album coming out. So we'll talk about this here. And then some of the best stuff is just like Nikki and Joel went to New York. It's like, okay, cool. Let's talk about that for 25 minutes and what happened,
And so just being a sponge. We see all of this stuff. What I think a lot of people consider background. I will read. I just love it. But I've always been a connoisseur of pop culture and stuff. And for no other reason than I always say I grew up in a People magazine house. So it's like I waited for that People magazine once a week. And now with the world we're in, you don't need it. It's every second, and if anything, you have to tune it out, every once in a while.
She's a connoisseur and I'm a kind of sewer. So it just depends on the morning.
Well, I love being able to have a place where I can steal fun facts. So thank you for that. But also that just gave me an idea. If I was smart enough to even just write down some of the themes from the show, I could even go to ChatGPT in the morning and be like, give me a really funny statistic that my middle school students would find cool for the day. And then I wouldn't have to steal it from you. I could just create it myself. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but don't do that. Keep listening and stealing it from us.
Yes.
That would be more beneficial to humanity, I think.
It's authentic. We're authentic versus,
Yeah.
that chat. That's not authentic. We approve of the stealing.
These teeth are not AI.
No.
The AI would have made them smaller.
There's so many things that we could be doing here. I love this. Okay, so if you had one element that you would recommend for teachers, just listening to, at the show and things you've learned in radio and connecting with an audience that you can't see and an audience that can't see you, what would be something that you'd like to recommend to them?
Man, that's interesting. We have a really great, or it feels like we have a lot of teachers that listen, and we talk about teachers a lot on the show because we've all had so many great ones. And then, of course, Nikki's mom was in education for so long. So teachers have always been important, certainly to our show from an audience perspective. I think part of what works well for us is just the willingness to say yes and from like kind of the improv world where, I'm trying to think of some of the things that have come out recently on the show where someone will say something and then we'll jump on it and it will become a bit that we're latching onto. And then before we know it, we've made a couple discoveries either about one another or about the listener that we didn't realize. And so the yes anding of just listening as an active listener and really, taking the information in and then going, okay, cool. How do I take this how do I carry the ball another 5 yards? I think it's always been a good part of the show.
Let me pause you there. I love that you just shared that. I'm going to have you elaborate. Teachers, friends listening, if you've never heard this before, I'm going to have Chris elaborate. He's saying to pause when you're answering and respond with yes and. Can you share a little bit about how they use that in improv?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I did a lot of improv, and yes and is the cardinal rule of improv. So let's say that we were doing an improvisational scene on a stage somewhere. And if you've ever seen improv, it's always like 5 or 6 people and they're on stage and they'll say like, okay, give us a place where these 6 people would be hanging out. Oh, a bus stop. Okay, great. We're at a bus stop. And then if you start the scene and somebody says like, oh, you and I work together, don't we? If the person goes, no, we don't. Well, now we're dead in the water. But if they say, oh, yeah, and you were late yesterday. Well, now we have this whole new world where we go, oh, wait a second. They do work together. They were late. Now there's conflict. Well, what's going on? Yeah, I was late, but it's not my fault because I got caught up in traffic and, I got that flat tire. Well, yeah, that's why I've been telling you for 10 years to get a new car. And now before you know it, there's like all of this content that we can build on.
Right?
Yeah,
like a layer and layer and layer. Yeah.
And if you're really good, by the end of the scene, you go back, you're like, well, you owe me money for that flat tire. And it's like, oh my God, that's what they said 20 minutes ago. That's crazy. So that's the yes anding that I've had great teachers that have done that. And that's sort of also, I think, in what I remember from the classroom where maybe you didn't get the question wrong, but we're grateful that you even spoke up and tried to take a swing at it, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I was in so many creative classes in college and in high school going down the path of creative writing. And for us in creativity and in just creating something, there's really no wrong answer. So it's hard to say to somebody like, no, that idea is dumb. Why would you say that? No, as opposed to, well, yeah, that could work. What if we went this direction with it? And now we're kind of creating avenues.
But I think that's what teachers do every day.
Yeah.
That's what you guys do every day. When a student has a part of it correct, right? Like you find that nugget and you're able to say like, okay, you didn't get the whole thing, but you got the root of it, right? So let's elaborate. And I mean, you talked earlier about us being on for 5.5 hours or 4.5 hours. We
don't even know.
Right. No, I mean, you're on all day. You are on all day.
Absolutely.
You got like teachers, nurses. I don't see any major difference because you're interacting with people one-on-one and it's such an important part of their day. You may be having the worst day ever, but you know what? Your class can't know that. And that is something I feel like that is these industries have so in common. It's or if you are having a bad day, maybe you tell your class you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
There's been times we've come in and I'm like, you guys, I am so salty. I can't do anything about it, and just this way they know it's not them. And so I really think there are so many parallels.
Well, and to that point, Nikki, I actually remember a time I've tuned in where you have actually said, like on a show, guys, I'm just having like an off morning. And I remember audibly being like, me too, Nikki. Like, it's a bonding moment. You don't know, you can't hear me, but I'm in my car being like, yep, Nikki and I having a bad day together.
You just chalk it up and you just get through it. And then, the next one's hopefully going to be better, but we all have them.
Yeah. And we also embrace it too on the show. Like I would never say like, well, don't talk about it. Like, no. Let's, and instead like mornings where, one of us, there was a morning I for the first time ever had woken up late. I rolled over at 4:55. I'm in at 5. So I was like, oh no, or your the coffee pot, like her auto coffee machine won't work one morning. And it's just those little changes in your routine, especially when your routine is down to the second, waking up at 4 a.m. Those little things then can become actually a positive impact on the show. Some of our best shows were when we were hungover, like because you don't have the brain space to care enough because you're like, I just want to survive. Let's get McDonald's and you know what I mean? I would not recommend being that in a classroom, but you get my point.
But if you have been, you figure it out.
Yeah, you work through it.
Friends, the Teach Better team cannot condone behavior that the Morning Mix is recommending. However, we can recommend a lot of what they've shared, like authenticity and the beautiful things that they've been able to recommend. Guys, I told you they are the best people ever. This is my favorite radio show. And we are going to get into some major takeaways and their contact information, including the app and everything else. So stick with us.
This episode is brought to you by S'more. Struggling to create a beautiful school newsletter people will actually read? Take a look at S'more. S'more is a newsletter creator built for educators like you, and you can get 50% off your first year of your paid S'more account now that you are connected to Teach Better. With hundreds of customizable templates, you can add your own text, images, videos, links, polls, or anything else you can think of for the perfect newsletter for your school community. Oh yeah, and it also can auto-translate your newsletter into like 100 different languages. So it's definitely something you want to look at, especially when it gives you detailed analytics for everything, including open rates and what links your community is clicking on. So simple, so easy, so effective. Get started today over at s'more.com/teachbetter.
We are on with part or half of the Morning Mix show. We have Chris and Nikki here with us. We are getting into some key takeaways from today's conversation as we get into a week of building authentic relationships and getting into so many more conversations. Remember that we have 3 episodes releasing every single week, all school year long. And we will also be sharing contact information for these 2 incredible people so that you too can reach out and follow all the incredible details that they are pushing out on their own social medias. And so you can be a listener and listen to the show, because I cannot be more of a fan. Nikki, I'm going to go to you first. If you had a major takeaway of this episode, maybe educators were multitasking during the show and only caught snippets, what do you hope they walk away with?
Just the relatability is what makes everybody authentic. Like I said earlier, and again, it just kind of dawned on me as we're talking about it. When you're being something you aren't, it's very hard to keep that up. And I think my favorite teachers in life have always been the ones who were very honest with me and real with me, and sometimes would say things like, hey, this isn't my favorite chapter, but it's an important chapter. You may not love the Beatles, but respect the Beatles. Like that kind of mentality. I think that's the takeaway, because when you do stuff like that, and I hope it sounds like when we say these things to you, Ray, when I tell you I'm having an awful day and I'm just trying to get through and you can relate, it brings us all to this level. And I think students lean in a little more and they're like, you know what? They are like us. They aren't just going through the motions. They aren't just filling out the lesson book. They literally are living this, and they're responding to what I respond to. And I just think those are the teachers that make the impacts in all of our lives. And the fact that we can help you just even get to school, that says so much to me. So thank you so much for listening. And it helps get up at the 4:15.
4:15.
Yeah, I sleep in a little.
Chris, a major takeaway from the episode. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in order to be authentic, you have to stop being inauthentic, which is kind of hard now with everything around us all the time. How many times have you taken a photo of like maybe one of your kids or your dog or something, and then you look at the photo and in the background, you're like, the house is a mess. I don't want to post this, And you think that, and then you go, oh, well, hey, let's try it again. Here, dog, come over here. Or you end up taking like 3 more photos of your kids so that the dirty kitchen's not behind them. And then they're just standing in front of a stair because that's the only thing that didn't have something on it. But then, I've noticed on our show, as we've learned so much more about each other and about our audience, we're all doing the same thing all the time, by and large, right? So if you have kids, your house is a mess, man. It's fine. And it's okay, and all of the stuff on social media that shows you these perfect curated lives are just that. It's a curated thing. So I think just bringing our true selves in every day has created this connection with our audience where they know we're just telling you who and how we are. And I think if we bring that to the classroom as well, then the students will respond in kind without even thinking of it. It feels, because we've seen that with our audience. Our audience responds the same way with authentic, truthful stories and comments. And I don't mind when someone texts us and says like, that wasn't funny, or, oh, I don't like that song. We talk about it. We'll be like, oh, we just got 2 texts that they don't agree.
Oh my gosh.
That's wonderful.
I said that breakfast was overrated.
Yes.
And I mean, I was berated.
We got lit up.
It was like, wow. But hey, that's my take. You can take it or leave it, but it invoked something in someone and they paid attention, and that was fun.
So again, I just think we're all so much more alike than we are not alike. And we're all going through the same things in our day to day. And really what we all feel is mundane. Like, no, that's what we're all dealing with. We're all 5 minutes late. Our kids all left a mess at home and they didn't eat their lunch because they didn't like what was in there today. So it's like they're coming home hungry and now great, the afternoon's ruined. You know what I mean? We've all been there together. So finding the connection is a lot easier than I think we all think it is.
So many great takeaways from today's episode. Friends, I am so excited for you to connect with Chris, Nikki, and everybody on the Morning Mix show, including just the Morning Mix in general, so you can catch all the content. Would you guys mind sharing where they can get connected to you on social media so maybe they can actually see your face and not just listen to the podcast or the radio show?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Chris Petlak, just my whole name, ChrisPetlak. And you can find the radio station at 1019 Mix Chicago, where you can see all of us all the time.
Yeah, and I guess I have an Instagram account, Nikki Chum. I do it sometimes. Like I said earlier, I'm in the weird vortex of having a kid who is in his own social media space. So it's very interesting time to post, to your point of what to do with everything, and then everything through the station, of course. Oh, and I do have a Facebook page, Nikki on the Mix.
Yeah, and as Ray mentioned before, we have our Mix app, which you can get in the Apple App Store and Google Play. It's there. Our podcast is on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast. And if you're in the Chicago area or Northwest Indiana or little bits of Wisconsin, you can listen live every morning on 101.9, which is awesome. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah, friends, even if you're not in the Chicago area, I would say a vast majority of the information they share is not Chicago related. I mean, Violetta will do traffic and you can hear about the Chicago traffic being terrible. Yeah. But other than that, you will enjoy it. There's such great things. Regardless of where you are, if you're listening in California, you'll love it. So plenty to do there. Chris, Nikki, you are clearly impacting hundreds of thousands of people every single day. And I'm so glad our Teach Better community could hear from you. Thank you so much for coming on Teach Better Talk podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And also just from us, for any teacher, educator, admin, if you clean the toilets at the school or coach the volleyball team, whatever you're doing in a school with kids, thank you so much for all of that work, because I know you're doing way more work than people see every day. So thank you so much.
So good.
Yeah, that's it. Lived it. I mean, no, all of it. Oh, there's so much we don't know. And like I said, each step you learn a little bit more about all the background stuff that has to take place just to make one day work.
Absolutely.
Have an amazing day, friends. Hope to see you tomorrow on the next episode of Teach Better Talk.